You have almost certainly been in this meeting. Someone at the end of the table is dominating the conversation, explaining a highly complex topic to the room with total, unshakable certainty. They've read one article, maybe watched a single documentary. Meanwhile, the actual expert in the room, the person who has spent 20 years studying this exact issue, is sitting quietly. When they do speak, they hedge their statements, frequently pausing to say, "It depends." Why are the people least qualified to have an opinion often the loudest, while the true veterans remain so quiet? This pattern appears across cultures and industries, repeated so consistently that it suggests a specific underlying mechanism in human thought. In unfamiliar territory, our internal barometer for competence seems to lose its calibration, making our gut instincts about our own abilities unreliable. In 1999, two psychologists at Cornell University, David Dunning and Dunning-Kruger, set out to measure how accurately people could judge their own competence. They tested participants in grammar, logic, and humor. Afterwards, they asked each person to estimate their performance compared to the room. This chart compares actual test scores to perceived performance. Individuals in the bottom 25% consistently believed they performed above average. Participants scoring in the 12th percentile estimated they outpaced 62% of peers, lacking the skill to recognize their errors. Because this effect has been replicated across dozens of fields, from financial literacy to emotional intelligence, it suggests a universal glitch in our cognition. In some area of your life right now, it is likely operating completely undetected. Our strongest feelings of absolute certainty often occur in the areas where we have the most significant, invisible blind spots. Evaluating a skill requires the same tools as performing it. To recognize good writing, for instance, you need to understand grammar and structure. Without those skills, you cannot evaluate writing accurately, including your own. Dunning called this the dual burden of incompetence. A lack of skill causes poor performance, while that same lack of skill prevents a person from recognizing the performance as poor in the first place. The incompetent are confidently wrong because they lack the very mechanism required to see their own errors. This graph plots a person's confidence on the vertical axis against their actual knowledge of a subject on the horizontal. As soon as a beginner learns the basics of a new topic, their confidence spikes. They reach a peak of absolute certainty, nicknamed Mount Stupid. Learning just enough to feel like an expert creates an illusion of mastery, while the massive scale of what remains unknown stays hidden. This explains the low beginner, but the highly qualified expert faces the opposite problem. If you keep learning, you begin to see the true complexity and nuance of the subject. Your confidence collapses into the valley of despair. This collapse is actually accurate calibration. An expert knows enough to see all the edge cases, all the exceptions, and all the ways they could be wrong. Top performers also assume that because a task is easy for them, it must be easy for everyone else. They often rate their own exceptional performance as merely average. True experts often remain quiet because their vast knowledge allows them to measure the size of their own ignorance. Modern learning often encourages us to stop once our initial curiosity is satisfied, leaving us stranded at the peak of false confidence. To achieve real competence, we must purposefully trigger a collapse in our own confidence and enter the intellectual discomfort of the valley of despair. Start by treating sudden certainty as a signal to pause. Protection against this effect requires actively seeking out the strongest arguments against your own current beliefs. Real understanding comes from practicing the phrase, "I don't know," and studying the messy, disputed edges of a field rather than just the core concepts. Escaping the illusion of mastery requires a daily, uncomfortable practice of actively hunting down the boundaries of your own understanding. Seek out the discomfort of genuine conversations with people who have spent decades mastering what you have only spent weeks learning. True intelligence requires making peace with the vast amount of information you will never know. Intellectual peace comes from climbing high enough to finally see the true, humbling scale of the mountain.